Hello and welcome to Communication Conflict Resolution. My name is Michael Betker. I am your instructor. That's my information there. As we know, you can reach me in many ways. The best way probably is via email. That's betkerm@uww.edu. Of course, open invitation to meet with me face-to-face as well. So let's proceed with this week. Again, like I mentioned, we're talking about emotions. What I'd like you to do to start with, obviously, is again watching this video. So again, like I always say, if you are watching the video now, you're off to a good start. First thing you'll want to do probably is read a very short article entitled "How Do Smart People Deal with Difficult People?" That's going to set us up for our Thursday post number 5, in which we discuss difficult people from our own perspective. So you'll do that on Thursday. That's worth 25 points. Let's do it midnight. Again, this is a weekly thing. So most often, in fact, everything is due either on Thursdays or Sundays at midnight. All of our posts are due every Thursday. Well, not every Thursday, but when we have them due, they're due on Thursdays at midnight. And then, of course, on Sunday, we have something called How to Criticize with Kindness, which I'll discuss here today in this lecture. Prior to that, I'd like you to watch a video. It's a really cool video about crucial conversation, something I trained others on in my professional life prior to becoming a teacher. So crucial conversation is a very good way of leading us into this discussion regarding how we criticize with kindness. So that's it for the week. A total of 85 points here in week 11. So we're easing back into it. And let's proceed here talking about the article. How smart people deal with difficult people. So it's a short article, like I said. We've all dealt with difficult people before. Difficult people essentially defy logic. We all have our stories to tell, and I'm hoping to hear some of yours this week. Some folks are blissfully unaware of the negative impact they have on those around them, and others seem to derive satisfaction from creating chaos and pushing other people's buttons. So maybe you're the button pusher, maybe you're the one who has the buttons pushed. Either way, they create unnecessary complexity, strife, and worst of all, stress. So stress is not a good thing, as we know, right? Stress causes long-term health problems. So one thing we're going to learn in this class, and I think specifically the next 2 weeks here, about emotions and how they can have a negative impact on us physically. Lots of studies have shown along the way here that stress can have a lasting negative impact on the brain. So exposure to even a day's worth of stress. Okay, so studies have long shown that stress can have a lasting negative impact on the brain. Exposure to even a few days of stress can compromise the effectiveness of neurons in our hippocampus. And next week we'll talk more about the physiological effects of stress and of conflict on our brains. But obviously, as we know, the hippocampus is an important brain area responsible for reasoning and memory. So weeks at a time of stress can cause irreversible damage in some cases, and months of stress can permanently destroy neurons. Stress is, of course, then for that reason, a formidable threat to our success. And when it gets out of control, our brains and our performance tend to suffer. So where we have this stress most often is at work, because obviously we deal with lots of folks that you may not be friends with in every case. That can cause a lot of stress. So what this article is about really is helping us understand and giving us clues. And it's a short article, so it's not a lot of reading here, but I'd like you to kind of look through this and discover some things maybe about yourself that you could do better. So let me get the long and short of this whole lecture here in this next couple of weeks here is to teach us something about our own emotional intelligence, or EQ, or in some cases listed as EI. So next week we'll have you take a test on what your current level of emotional intelligence is, but really the ability to manage our emotions and remain calm under pressure has a direct link to our performance. So lots of studies and research on that, but one in particular from a company called Talent Smart that was conducted on 1 million or more people, found that 90% of top performers are skilled at managing their emotions in times of stress in order to remain calm and in control. So one of their greatest gifts is the ability to neutralize difficult people. And that's really what we're talking about here, okay? So now, if you don't know who you're dealing with, who may be the difficult person, so you may want to look in the mirror because maybe you're the difficult person. Either way, I've run across numerous effective strategies that many people smarter than me employ when dealing with difficult people. So hope to share those with you today. So what follows in this article, I think, are some of the best of those. So read on, and obviously, like I said, in about 15 minutes, you'll know a little bit more about this. So obviously, it's how we handle our emotional outputs. And it starts by kind of acknowledging kind of who we are. So that's really what emotional intelligence is all about, is really understanding kind of what buttons we push or what buttons are pushed by others in us to create certain emotional responses. So using emotional intelligence in confrontation and conflict can really lend a lot of help in your daily activities, and obviously have a physiological positive effect if you're able to manage it effectively. Some tips I want to share with you guys on managing your emotion. And again, we'll talk more about this next week as well. First and foremost, knowing what your emotional triggers are. So for me, I tend to get a little stressed out when I drive. And I realize that a lot of times I'm just a very an impatient driver. So for me, when I get behind the wheel, I have to tell myself, hey, listen, okay, people go at different speeds. You may want to go faster. You need to slow down and not get so charged up when somebody makes a mistake in front of you. So that's something I have to tell myself pretty much every day. Now I commute to and from Whitewater pretty much every day, Monday through Thursday. So that's literally almost 2 hours in the car every day for me when I go to Whitewater. So it certainly behooves me to spend that time productively. Conversely, obviously, you want to know what might bug others from you as well. So that's sometimes not always easy to do. So when I say look in the mirror, that's what we do when we think about our own emotional intelligence. But know that you might have some proclivities and certain behaviors that you're not aware of that may cause others their version of strife. So being aware and taking stock of that is important. Of course, the third point here, appreciate that people have different emotional responses. That's important as well, and that's something you'll learn as you get to know people better. But some folks go quiet, others get escalated pretty quickly, and all points in between. So it's important to understand that we all have our own ways of dealing with emotional stress. Understand that every case, emotions can actually escalate conflict. So you got to be careful there, and that's why it's so important to be aware. That's the first step, is to be aware of the emotions that might be charging a situation. And then what we'll do here in this article is you'll learn how to de-escalate emotions in conflict. So that's super critical, obviously not just for you, but the other party as well, or other parties. So we'll learn about that today as well. I'd like you to start by watching this video here regarding crucial conversations. In this particular clip, which is in this module here for week 11, you'll see a public speaker who's awesome talking about crucial conversations, and use an example of he and his son. Obviously, after a little while, you'll see his logic behind how he comes to a solution with regard to a potential conflict with his son. So enjoy that video. It is a pretty cool story, and that helps set up what we're going to be doing here. So obviously, emotions have a play and a place in how we conduct ourselves with others. We've talked about this before, but the idea of silence or violence, like we do have different responses. Some folks like to kind of be quiet and feel reserved or behave reservedly. Of course, others tend to kind of skew on the other perspective, on the other end, with maybe not violence, but maybe something a little more strong. Either way, we are often tempted to move to either one of those two, silence or violence. Now, obviously, lots and hours of observation have kind of yielded this idea that the way you are about to act is largely affected by how you feel right now. So that's what emotional intelligence really is about, is really being in touch with your moment-to-moment emotions. So ultimately, here's the insight for you guys here. How you feel is not a direct function of what you just saw or heard or experienced. So again, I'll use my driving example. When I see somebody driving in front of me who I think may not be doing as good of a job as I think they could be, I need to kind of just take it in stride with that insight. It's not how I feel at the moment, what I just saw or heard explained. So how you feel is not a direct function of what you just saw, heard, or experienced. So here's a question for you guys. And again, the idea here is, how do we criticize folks with kindness? Now, on the flip side of this, if somebody has done something that you would like to bring some attention to your point of view about, how do you go about doing that in such a way that you still maintain a good relationship? So why would you take so much time and energy to do this? Well, here's the answer. It is a sound psychological strategy that transforms your opponent into a more receptive audience for your criticism or dissent, which in turn helps advance the discussion. So ultimately, if you do this the right way, and you're able to kind of levy maybe some criticism that is not supercharged, you'll probably have better luck getting your way, or at least having some sort of a conversation that's not charged with emotion. So Daniel C. Dennett is the author of many books. One, of course, is Consciousness Explained here, as you see in this slide. But what he talks about here, and this is kind of a setup for our Sunday project, where I'm going to ask you to compose a successful critical commentary using his 4 steps. So Daniel Dennett obviously has this question to answer with his books. Just how charitable are you supposed to be when criticizing the views of an opponent? Now, that's a really tricky question, but he offers us some clues and gives us 4 steps that I'd like you to use in our upcoming Sunday project. So here are the 4 steps. First is you should attempt to re-express your target's position so clearly, vividly, and fairly that your target says, you know what, thanks, I wish I'd thought of putting it that way. So in other words, you're taking their own words and you're saying, all right, I'm going to demonstrate to you that I know what you're talking about by using your own words. And the best way to do that ultimately is to kind of refashion what that person said slightly into your own words and then bounce it back to them. And usually you'll get a response like, oh, that's pretty good, or maybe I know I meant this. But either way, what happens is you find common ground through restating the comment that they made. So that's the first step, being able to re-express the target's position so there's no confusion. Step 2, you should list any points of agreement. So that's the key, finding common ground again, right? Especially if they are not matters of general or widespread agreement. Either way, the more things you can list where you find agreement, the better off you're going to be on the stuff maybe you don't agree on as much. That's step 2. Step 3, you should mention anything you have learned from your target. So again, I wasn't aware of X, Y, or Z. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I have a slightly different perspective on this particular discussion. So wherever you can, again, that kind of ties in with number 2 there. And then, of course, the 4th, only then are you permitted to say so much as a word of rebuttal or criticism. So as much as possible, you want to withhold any criticism or any rebuttal until you've taken all of this other information in and you've actually gone through steps 1, 2, and 3. Okay. All right, so how to criticize with kindness. That's what this final assignment is, worth 60 points. What I'd like you to do is to read through the assignment and select 2 of the scenarios provided. For each, you must write a response to your target of persuasion, following the 4 steps that I've provided here. Okay, so I'd like you to write out the dialogue in script format, taking great care to be sure that you are following the 4 steps for each example. This, of course, is due on Sunday at 11:59. You are to write 300 words, give or take, for 2 of these scenarios provided, okay? I'd like you to write 300 words for each, and this is due, of course, on Sunday at 11:59. Okay, that's it for this section here, a little shorter than normal, which is probably a good thing. I would say make sure you read that short article that's provided, and then, of course, watch the video, and then you're off to the races. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be here for you. You've got the number, you've got the email. Good luck this week, and we'll talk to you next week.